Hello, everyone. Welcome. We've got hopefully a big crowd in today for our last webinar for 2025. So thanks for coming. We're looking forward to this one. It's a great topic to finish off the year. So today's webinar is titled Transforming Data Governance with Microsoft Purview from E3 Foundations to E5 Excellence. So hopefully a little bit of something for everyone watching today. I'm Gareth Davis, Key Account Specialist at Cloud Essentials. As per usual, I'll be introducing today's webinar, so top and tailing as we like to call it, which is the easy part of introducing what's coming, and then the wrapping up with some key takeaways and an exciting offering at the end as well. So thankfully, I've got a star team to help and guide us through this session to make sure it's insightful. From the Cloud Essentials team, we've got the brilliant Johan van Schalkwijk, our Managing Director and Head of Solutions. And we've also got our fantastic compliance lead, Nivasha Sanalal, to talk all things legal, risk and compliance and how that ties into the technology with our methodology for deploying Microsoft Purview. And today we also have a special guest from Microsoft that we work closely with in the UK market. So it's great to welcome Aileen Finlay today, Microsoft Technical Specialist. Aileen, I'm going to give you the opportunity just to give you a brief introduction yourself, and then we'll hand the reins back to me for the introduction.
Super, thanks, Gettin. Welcome everyone. So yeah, Aileen Finlay. I am a solution engineer here at Microsoft. I'm with Microsoft the last 4 years. I've 20 years in the industry, so cybersecurity. I daily basis, my role would basically involve anything around kind of technically understanding exactly what way you operate in your business, and then helping you uncover any kind of technical blocks or gaps you have from identity, compliance and security, and now obviously bringing AI into that model as well, so anything around security copilot as well. So yeah, great to be here today. I have a section at the end around security copilot, so excited to be here, and thanks to the Cloud Essentials team for inviting me over.
Thanks, Aileen. Look forward to hearing a bit more about that. You've given the secret away in terms of what might be coming at the end in terms of security copilot. So that'll be good to hear about that later on. In terms of what we'll cover today, you can see it on the screen. The team is going to take you through activating foundational Purview features that are already available to you in E3 licensing. We're going to discuss best practices for establishing and configuring your Purview foundations effectively, which is where our specialist team excel. Then we'll jump into the additional value E5 unlocks through automation, insider risk management, adaptive DLP, communication compliance, and advanced data insights. Just before we dive into it, though, just a reminder for anyone new to our webinar series, and I think there's a few on the call today, of who we are and what we do. So Cloud Essentials are a long-standing and dedicated Microsoft 365 partner. We specialize in the areas of content management, so we help organizations mature their approaches in areas like reducing the risk profile of your content in M365, migrating and managing the content cost effectively, and ultimately opening up the value in content so you can surface it to your business advantage. And that's especially true in today's AI landscape. So we also offer cover multiple other areas where we have a team of experts, so including complex migration projects, backup and storage optimization expertise around Azure architecture, also Power Platform application development, and we also delve into the world of e-discovery. So feel free to follow up with us on any of these areas, as well as what we're discussing today, which is the data governance and Microsoft Purview side of things. Just before we jump into it, this next slide is just a glimpse really into our current world at Cloud Essentials. These are some of the projects that we're running with at the moment on data governance and the deployment of Microsoft Purview. So all of these are on the journey that we'll talk about in more detail later on, which starts with a foundational deployment of Microsoft Purview and rolls into what is our data governance as a service as well. So all of these you can see on the screen have some common elements. Regulated industry status, for example, size. They place high value onto their content and also their overall investment, obviously, in Microsoft as well. Just to highlight some of them from looking at the registrations, they tie in with a lot of the sectors that we've got on the call today. So, for example, global financial services company with a huge presence through 41 markets. There's a big construction engineering company which is highly regulated. An international mining company, complex multi-geography regulations and policies to look at. Massive global chemical and energy company, again, complex, highly regulated. large government agency, which is very complex, as you can probably imagine. And then we also have a lot of success in the legal space as well. And as we'll discuss, Microsoft Purview really is a hot topic at the moment and solution, in this age of AI. So we're seeing this with these deployments, and it's accelerating the need to deploy solutions to secure your data. Right, we're going to get going. I'm going to just fire some questions at us as we go along in the chat and Q&A section that is provided. If we've got time at the end, we'll come back to these, but if we haven't got time, we will get back to you separately on those questions as well. With that, I will pass you on to our very able team, and firstly over to Johan.
Thank you very much, Kishan. AI transformation is happening now and accelerating at an incredible pace. This is no surprise to any of us, and the data only confirms what we are all seeing and experiencing. 95% of organizations are already implementing or developing an AI strategy. 75% of knowledge workers are already using AI at work, and that has doubled in the past 6 months. 1% of risk leaders are thoroughly prepared for mass Gen AI availability risks. So what does this all mean? This rapid AI transformation is only compounding today's challenges around securing and governing data. More than 80% of leaders have cited leakage of sensitive data as their main concern, with almost half of them expecting to continue banning all use of generative AI in the workplace. Only 31% of organizations have established a global data architecture, and only 25 have a global data governance program, which you'll hear later is critical to trustworthy AI innovation. Regulatory liability will continue to play a larger role in AI deployments. By 2027, at least one global company will see its AI deployment banned by a regulator for non-compliance issues. To try and overcome this complexity, the market has responded with dozens of products that address fragments of data security, data governance, and compliance, forcing businesses to stitch together a patchwork of solutions that doesn't work well together, expose infrastructure gaps, and are costly and complex to manage. Organizations are using an average of 12 solutions to secure their entire data estate, resulting in more work and higher costs. Deploying multiple solutions can lead to duplicated data, inconsistent data classification, redundant alerts, and a few potential risks of potentially the worst being damage to brand reputation. All of these concerns are risks, and risks are compounded by the proliferation of fragmented tools. This fragmentation leads to complex and costly integration and a greater management burden, which usually falls short of fully meeting the business needs and results in exposed infrastructure gaps, along with ineffective governance over data being used in AI innovation. Microsoft Purview offers unified data security, data governance, and data compliance solutions in the era of AI. Microsoft Purview's set of solutions have shared capabilities value as they leverage the same industry-leading AI-powered data classification technology like data map, data connectors, audit logs, and visibility, and it's got a unified and central management experience. The great news is that you already have Microsoft Purview data security solutions available with your Microsoft E3 licenses today. There are basic and manual functionality in data loss prevention, information protection, and data lifecycle management already included in your E3 licenses. These Microsoft Purview features allows organizations to start deploying these Microsoft Purview data security solutions utilizing the Secure by Default deployment blueprint. In fact, we even recommend existing Microsoft 365 E5 customers to follow the same deployment path and journey when they are implementing Microsoft Purview. It sets organizations up on a good foundation for the continuous adoption of data security and data governance. Customers on Microsoft 365 E3 can utilize their existing licenses and start on the journey with default sensitivity labels, data loss prevention policies for labeled files, and continue the journey to the managed phase by deploying data loss prevention policies based on content and sensitive information types. Additional to these two phases, organizations with E3 licenses can also utilize manual retention labels and organization-wide retention policies as part of the data lifecycle management solution. So let me take you through each of these three Purview data security features, starting off with information protection. Information protection is Microsoft's data security and encryption solution that allows organizations to label, classify, and protect content regardless of where it lives. Organizations and E3 license users can apply labels at a default or manual way to both emails and files. What that essentially means is that encryption and access control travels with the email or document, being a Word document, across any storage location across various environments. An example would be if a document, potentially a sensitive document, is encrypted with highly confidential and access controlled, even if that document is accidentally or maliciously copied to an offline location like a USB drive, users will not be able to open up that file without authenticating. And even if they authenticate, the built-in encryption and access control will validate that the user has got access to the content before allowing them to open up that sensitive file. With E3 licenses, it is easy to get started utilizing this feature. You have the ability to, as I mentioned, define policies on SharePoint and OneDrive document libraries to apply default sensitive labels within the user's Office applications. And this applies to both Office applications, but also PDF files. This will also allow users to further adjust the sensitivity and labels themselves in a manual fashion. Additionally, you can also then encrypt and protect emails by utilizing do not forward or other native encryption functionality, utilizing, again, the same default sensitive labels. So it's a good foundational start for adopting information protection and really gets the organization ready for the change management by allowing your users to get familiar with labels and the use cases for each of the labels, and also utilize the metrics back to drive further adoption and automation as you mature into the E5 license. The next feature available with your E3 licenses is data loss prevention. Data loss prevention is a Microsoft Cloud native way to protect against malicious and accidental data leakage. And it's built into not only the native cloud environments, all your Microsoft 365 workloads like Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive, but then as you expand into E5 licenses, you also have the ability to apply the same data loss prevention controls onto your endpoint devices, non-Microsoft cloud applications like Dropbox, Salesforce, and the likes, but also importantly, on-premise locations such as legacy file shares. You also have the ability to apply through Azure Purview data loss prevention onto more structured data sources through those Graph API connectors. Available to E3 licenses is, again, pre-built templates with common regulations such as GDPR, HIPAA, and personal identifiable information like PCI. And you have the ability to utilize those built-in templates and default policies to apply controls onto emails and files, essentially aligning with your legal and regulatory compliance, utilizing those built-in templates as a good foundational starting point. The last feature is, sorry, just want to get the bug out of the way, is then data lifecycle management. So data lifecycle management is Microsoft's solution for retaining content based on your regulatory compliant requirement. You have the ability for assigning explicit retention labels that can be applied to an item level, similar to sensitivity labels, so to documents, emails, etc. And those policies will dictate how long the document must be retained. And furthermore, at the end of that retention period, whether it must be automatically deleted or go through a disposition review process before being defensively deleted. You also have the ability then with your E3 licenses to define implicit retention policies or policies that applies to a location. So for example, specific SharePoint sites or mailboxes that needs to ensure that the content within those locations are retained only for how long the sensitive information types within that content is retained. So for example, if you need to retain personal information for no longer than 3 years, you can utilize a combination of the retention policy and retention label to then ensure any personal information is defensively deleted after the required duration it must be retained for business purposes. E3 customers, the easiest way to start, as I mentioned, they can only utilize the manual process for applying retention labels. So similar to retention policies, you can allow your organization or your users to assign retention labels to specific documents and emails. So if it's a contact, it needs to be retained for 7 years because of the business process requirement, and that label will enforce that retention. But also you've got an implicit retention policy you can define holistically across the location. So ensuring that all email is retained, for example, 7 years to meet your regulatory and compliance requirements, ensuring even if end users delete content from the recycle bin permanently purged, it is always retained in the backend and is e-discoverable and exportable if there's any investigation or legal case required. And so now you might say, that's great, Johan. It's very simple. I'm going to go away and turn on the Purview features tomorrow. But unfortunately, we have seen organizations and their IT team deploy DLP and information protection solutions without collaboration with critical business stakeholders, which results in the configuration affecting business operations and the deployment fully halted and delayed indefinitely. For this reason, we have developed a data governance methodology to assist organizations with successfully implementing the controls available within Purview. Nivasha, bringing you in here, can you please explain our methodology and why it is critical for successfully adoption of Microsoft Purview?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. So I'm going to be taking you through our data governance approach. And of course, as we understand, data governance speaks to holistically people, process, technology, as well as any other, even if it's a manual process, anything you put into place as an organization to manage your data effectively throughout its life cycle. The Cloud Essentials, we've taken this we've taken the various learnings we've had over the number of years in the business, as well as watching many clients try and often fail with their deployment, and understand how do we help move the process along? How do we ensure that regulatory compliance stays front and center while still keeping up with the ever evolving technology? What that led to is us using two key principles. So the first is people, process, and technology. And often, I mean, we hear people use this as a catchphrase, but as I'm going to explain as we continue, you'll see how we use this principle of people, process, and technology, which essentially means any control that we advise you on, any control adapted or adopted rather, speaks to all three of these elements. And then the next principle that we've based our methodology on is this principle of a combined assurance model. So if you're from the insurance industry or an industry that might do CBRs or combined assurance returns, it's not your typical, it's not a report. What we're looking at doing is bringing together the various stakeholders and the key stakeholders within your business that often can, impact your technology deployment, as well as your overall data governance landscape. And we're bringing them together on the same page so that when you're making decisions from a technology perspective, you're not leaving the people and process behind as you go along. So that sounds really good, but how do you bring that together practically? And what we've done is we've really taken those 2 key principles and we've translated it into 5 steps. And I'm going to be taking you through the steps on respective slides. So our step 1 really is to assess and benchmark, because how do you know where to start? You know, there's amazing technological solutions out there, and we of course are going to be diving into Microsoft specifically, but what else might be within your ecosystem? How do we understand and unpack that? How does it currently manage your risk? We then also want to understand from a regulatory perspective, where are you? Are you staring down new regulations, a new regulator that might have, you know, certain scrutiny on how you might be doing business depending on the industry you're in? What does your regulatory universe currently look like? And we then take that information, so understanding your technological landscape, understanding your regulatory landscape, and we adopt what we call a risk-based approach. So try to understand where you should be concentrating your resources on. So taking this risk-based approach is obviously supported by the various legislations as well, where regulators look at making sure you manage your risk by taking this risk-based approach. So how we translate that is ensuring that your technology and your compliance obligations are aligned in a manner that ensures that you take or you tackle your most riskiest issues first. So often, and we'll unpack that perhaps as we go along, often that is now boiling down to generative AI. So how do you do that in a way that's where you're still deploying your technology, still maintaining your regulations, but ensuring that you meet your highest risks first? So that's really where, as a business cloud essentials, we would develop what we call a compliance roadmap or data governance roadmap to help you align with your journey. If we move on to our next phase, possibly the most important phase, it's really this assemble and engage approach. So this is where we formulate what we call, or we help you as a client formulate a data governance panel. So this data governance panel, as the name suggests, it is looking at overall your policies, processes, and any technology you might have in place to manage your data across its life cycle. But it also helps when making key decisions. So what technology do you go ahead and deploy? And when do you do that? Often within our data governance panel, we have stakeholders from across the business. It is usually an executive level working group. We have some clients that would often refer to it as a steerco, but really what we're trying to do is ensure that we're able to balance the competing interests across your business. I think if you're sitting here from risk and compliance, you're obviously concerned about what your regulatory universe looks like, how the technology might bring down your risk. And if you're from a technology perspective, you understand how the Purview workings, how the Purview might exist, but you might not know how your policies and processes will talk to that in the future, so as you deploy. So really what our panel looks to do is helps bringing that all together. So because we know that the technology is amazing, it's very sophisticated, it is designed for GRC professionals as well, but the panel helps to make sure that you're also monitoring any internal policies, any standards and regulations. Are you chasing an ISO 27001 certification, or do you need to maintain your certification? How does Microsoft Purview help you do that? So some of the education that we would typically bring to a panel answers those questions. And we found in our experience that having this executive sponsorship, having this executive panel steering the program really helps to overcome any hurdles with your technology deployment as well. So if we look to the objectives, really it is to help you move. So if you have been on an M365 journey before and you've hit bumps in your journey, often what we do in this panel is to help overcome that. So whether the barrier might be from a technology perspective, so if it's understanding how a certain technology might impact your overall risk, or if it's vice versa, if it's on the risk side or the GRC side rather, and there's a concern around the impact of using certain technology, we're able to help you overcome those barriers by providing you with the relevant education and telemetry to keep your progress going with Microsoft 365 as well. So if we then look at our next phase, it's really around drive and deliver. So the actual translation. So all the work we've already done, prioritizing your risk and understanding where you need to start with your technical journey really comes into culmination here in our drive and deliver phase, where we're now actually translating those governance and compliance risks into the technical controls. But again, we do understand how important change management is, how important it is to get the correct buy-in from the various levels of stakeholders within your business. So as a business, we have developed a program to take you through that. And we've also adopted a specific deployment methodology to help ease people into that journey. And I suppose we'll cover off some of that as we progress. But what you'll see at the bottom is it's always underpinned by this governance, risk, and compliance advisory function. So if you're starting with something like information protection, and you might not already have a data classification policy, or at a very high level you've created one, but you might not have had the relevant stakeholder buy-in, and you now need to get that socialized within your business and actually used. Or if you're starting from scratch, as a business, Cloud Essentials is able to assist with that. Having been in the industry for as long as we have, depending on your vertical, we typically would assist with defining your data classification taxonomy with you or for you, as well as identifying any sensitive information types in order to make sure that you're using your technology to its maximum potential as well. And really, our last phase is to monitor and report. And I say last phase, but I'm very aware that, and I think everyone on the call as well, that compliance isn't a once-off. It isn't a destination. This is an iterative process. So depending on where you might join us on the journey, your monitoring and reporting could look different. So if you're if we might be a little earlier on in your project, then it would look at the telemetry we'd bring through to your data governance panel to help you move along, or move the needle on your compliance rather. If you are closer to the end, depending again on your licensing and where you're at, we'll show you how to monitor and provide reports to your key stakeholders as to how the technology is helping you to bring down your overall risk. So I suppose that's in a nutshell our data governance journey. I think I'm handing over back to you, Johan.
Thank you, Nivasha. So similar to your data governance and Purview, data governance and security journey, Purview is never an implement and forget type of solution. As your modern collaboration data platform matures, especially with the adoption of AI and other more advanced features, you would need to incorporate some of the more automated and AI-empowered solutions that's included in E5 licenses. So while starting off with your foundational journey using your E3 licenses on the Microsoft Purview solution, you would need E5 license and features eventually so that you can continue on this journey of growing your data governance and security, utilizing the secure by default adoption journey. For this, importantly, Microsoft E5 licenses allows you, as I mentioned, to extend your data security and governance to your full Microsoft Purview solution stack. So moving from manual data security to more automated, driven by policies that prioritize sensitive information types that is built in within Microsoft 365. So for example, regular expression types like credit card numbers or employee ID numbers, to the more advanced sensitive information types like turnable classifiers that builds on top of machine learning and pattern recognition to securely and correctly identify sensitive content within your organization. Under E5 licenses, you can continue this phase deployment of Purview in the optimized and strategic phases, utilizing some of the advanced Purview features that actually builds on top of your core Purview functionality. Those include insider risk management, that is a behavior analytics engine built onto Purview that actually establishes anomalies within user behavior, elevates the user's risk, and allows you then to enforce stricter controls within the Microsoft Purview technology. So for example, if an employee that has resigned mass downloads a lot of data from SharePoint and then attempts to exfiltrate that large volume of data by emailing themselves, that will trigger a high level of user risk, and the appropriate DLP policy will force that user not to be able to download or exfiltrate that sensitive content that they have mass downloaded. There are additional advanced and AI-empowered features that's also included in E5 licenses. Additionally to just the features, I've briefly mentioned it already before, Purview and E5 license specifically allows you then to further extend your data security and governance utilizing Microsoft Purview to your full data estate. This includes your data on devices at rest, the external data sources outside of the built-in Microsoft 365 environment that's associated with the only area that Purview actually can apply to. So you can also apply controls and classification on AI, in Azure locations, even third-party data sources like AWS, Google, Dropbox, etc. So utilizing E5, you really can cover your full data estate. I think that's very important when it comes to the age of AI. We are all living and breathing AI, and it's being driven in all corners of the world. I think the biggest risk is what sensitive data is actually being consumed within AI, whether it's native AI and Copilot solution that's available from Microsoft and allowed by the organization, or shadow AI, where organizations aren't aware of the AI and generative AI that their end users are utilizing and what sensitive information is exposed to those generative AI solutions. And this is just compounded by the AI landscape evolving from passive tools into more autonomous and goal-driven collaborators or agents. As previously mentioned, this further compounds the existing data risks. This means that organizations need to respond and mitigate data risks at the pace of AI. But let me bring in Aileen, that will discuss the solution from Microsoft, specifically Security Copilot. So over to you, Aileen.
Super. Thanks, Johan. Thanks, Navesha. Really good insights there. And I think probably what I would say from Microsoft in-house, usually when I'm working with a customer that has, they're transitioning from E3 to E5, and they're trying to look for probably the more compelling reason as why they would do that transition. And I had a question there last week around, Aileen, like when I set policies, what actions have I got? What's the difference in like kind of what I can actually do and what actions can happen when E3 to E5? And I says, look, they're all the same. Like whatever policy and whatever action you put on the back of that, exactly what Johan said. Like you might say, you know, you can't forward or it has to be encrypted. They're exactly the same in E3 to E5. But what I did explain is you're dependent on your end user to actually set that label in order for that action to happen. So if you are in a position where, you know, those actions and you're under compliance regulations, those actions have to happen, and you probably don't want to depend on the manual side of it, this is where the automation kicks in. And this is where kind of the automation in E5 is really, and that's only one small aspect of E5, but that's always a question I get asked. And if you want to look at kind of supercharging that kind of automation and looking at AI, and that's what I'm going to go through here. And just even to have a little look here at the numbers here. So we all know, look, the introduction of AI over the past few years, it's a massive surge of usage, and especially in this year alone, the usage of AI, like I myself, I'm using AI so much more in the last couple of months, and I probably have to use it a lot more, and probably everyone else on this call is using it a lot more, because the speed of how we're actually operating and how we're working and what's expected of us, we're using a lot more of AI tools. However, that's brilliant for us, but it's not only that increase is like the public heavily adopting AI means that our threat actors are also heavily adopting this as well. So it means they're getting faster, smarter, and more persistent. So in 2024, 67% of phishing attacks use some sort of form of AI. And even from that 2024 to this year, I even think that number has doubled in the first couple of months of this year. I done an event there a couple of weeks ago, and those numbers from Microsoft bring out what's called a digital defense report every year. We just brought one out there in October. And if you look at the changes of those stats in that report, you'll notice a massive increase in kind of AI and how AI is used in organizations, and then how AI is used by threat actors. So yeah, it's overwhelming for our analysts and our security professionals trying to keep up with this. So if you like keeping in mind kind of this avalanche of alerts every day, we're getting statistics back to say only 65% of these alerts are reviewed. So data is growing hugely. Alerts are increasing. Large companies can see up to 66 security alerts daily, making human-only monitoring just unsustainable. You can't be monitoring all these alerts. Data, the massive influx of data that's growing, all of these alerts, whether they're DLP alerts or other alerts, or, you know, as Johan said earlier on, kind of insider risk, somebody's moving data outside of the organization, how you're actually looking at those risks and how you're monitoring those. So alarmingly, another statistic here, 73% of cyber security experts admit that they've missed, ignored, or failed to respond to high priority alerts. So too much for all of us. The bottom line here is there's too much noise today. It's only going to grow. It's getting extremely difficult for the average human team to understand all of this. Okay, so where we are today is Security Copilot. So Security Copilot was launched in April 2024. So we all know there's a global security talent shortage. Really tough today to get the right professionals in to actually understand exactly what's going on. So what we have got back from like early adopters of Security Copilot, organizations can see increases in productivity from their analysts. So helping analysts to catch what they might have otherwise missed. So during private preview, Security Copilot has seen a massive impact in solving huge problems in security industry. So tier 1 analysts can now compete or complete like your complex tasks that would probably take a couple of hours, a couple of days. They can do that in seconds here. So we can see here on the left-hand side, one of our customers that did adopt early could see like it takes us 3 minutes to do a task that would usually take us a couple of hours. And any of those tasks, as I said, like sieving through a load of data, like data loss prevention policies, understanding exactly what's happening there, and using probably your DLP triage agent to say, okay, what's happening here? What should I do next? Should I create a policy? And Security Copilot kind of helping you and guiding you along that journey. So the word, obviously, as we know, Copilot, is it somebody just guiding you a little bit easier around how you would set those policies, how you would be more productive with these products, how you could even, for instance, set like KQL policies, your custom query language, and, you know, how would I set up a policy that would, or how would I develop a custom query language that would help me understand exactly what my user Johan is doing. Has he taken any data outside of the organization in the last 3 days? Anything like that, you bring it to light with this Security Copilot and being able to talk to it in simple language. So let me just kind of walk you through a few simple examples around what we can do with Security Copilot. Okay, so what we can see here is your DLP triage agent in Microsoft Purview. So it uses AI to automate alert triage. So it cuts through that noise and it prioritizes high risk incidents. So it's bringing that noise ratio that's continually rising, it's bringing it down to understandable steps. So it learns from kind of feedback, so it learns from your users. So it uses that kind of user behavioral analytics. So it learns from kind of feedbacks, it adapts to threats, and it reduces that alert fatigue. So it supports Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and endpoints, and it can turn hours of work into minutes. So boosting productivity and enabling kind of a junior analyst to handle complex tasks. So basically helping to tackle those kind of, whether it's a gap in cybersecurity skills or whether it's just an understanding of kind of where you are on this journey, where you want to be, and what policies you probably need in place in order to be up to scratch. And it could be from a compliance regulated standpoint or from a possible breach that you already had. So that's one example of how we use it. The next example, and what I'm going to show here, this is kind of more going into your security areas. So for the customers that are probably already using some of our Microsoft security products, if not, it's just will give you an example of probably some of them, like whether you were just using Entra or whether you had the other Defender products as well. This gives the example of how we would work from a security standpoint, because we all know kind of data hygiene and data security does work hand in hand with security. So if a bad threat actor was in and he did access the organization via an email and he did get onto an endpoint, and then his end goal was to actually get data outside of the organization, you know, he's going to trigger a lot on the way. We don't want to just know about, you know, that data leaving the organization. We want to know that path that was taken in order to get in, so that we can go back and create those rules from an email perspective, create the rules from an endpoint perspective, you know, whatever tools are installed on the endpoint. And then obviously the part we're getting to is around the data, you know, this data did go out and what has happened here. So in this particular example here, we can see it's a summary and a timeline of the attack. So initial entry point, affected assets, indicators of compromise, and basically all options on how you can automate and contain these actions. I think if we just pop up, there should be another area that comes up here that shows exactly all of the options around kind of containment. So yeah, this kind of gives you an understanding of how we can actually understand that incident and what we can do. So in the event of like a DLP incident or a Purview incident, it's going to say, you know, this is exactly what happened. These policies weren't in place. Do you want to set these policies? And whether, you know, you want to have that as just results coming back on what you can do, kind of from a triage point and the tasks that you can do, or whether you want to have workflows in that as well and where you can enable that. Okay, now we advance to the next slide. So, good news here. So, Security Copilot, so it was only announced there, I think, at Ignite, so that would have been 3 weeks ago. It's now included in E5 licenses. So it operates using what's called secure compute units, so SCUs. So if you wanted to estimate, if you were working with E5 or you were looking in the future to go with E5 and you want to understand, well, how many secure compute units will I get monthly? What you just need to do is the number of your license, divide the number of your license by 2.5. So basically for every 2.5 licenses you're getting that you have, you will get 1 SCU. So that gives you a good kind of indication of exactly how many SCUs you will get. The availability of this. So if you're on E5 today and you're on this kind, you're saying, I don't have this at all. I don't know kind of how to get this. This is a phased approach. And I think the first phase that will receive this are early adopters of Security Copilot. So customers that already have Security Copilot in there, they will see these free SCUs come to them first. And then obviously the next phases will come. So I believe from this month, it started in November. So November, December, and I believe January, it's a phased approach. Before you will get access to Security Copilot, you will see a banner within your portal to say it's 30 days before you will have access to Security Copilot. So it will actually let you know, it will give you instructions on exactly what to do. You don't need to set up anything. There's no setup in any of this. You might just want to get some understanding around how to get the best use out of your consumption units, because you want to make sure that the prompts that are being ran by your analysts are the prompts that are needed, or the help that this Security Copilot is doing for your organization is the right, because it's consuming as you're doing prompts. You want to make sure that, you know, you're actually well up to date on exactly how to run these prompts. And that's where I think Cloud Essentials come in here. So Cloud Essentials will be running kind of workshops where they'll be able to help you understand exactly how to use these SCUs, what are the best prompts to use for your organization. So I would highly recommend getting in touch with the guys at Cloud Essentials and kind of getting some time in your calendar with them to do one of these workshops, so that when it does come up and you do have this availability, you know exactly what to do with your team. So yeah, I think I'm going to hand back over to the guys here, and I think they have a bit more information around these workshops they're going to run. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aileen. Really exciting update there on Security Copilot, and I'll come back to those workshops in just a second, because that is definitely something that we want to offer up to the audience today. Thanks to the Cloud Essentials team as well. I'm just going to wrap it up just gently with a few key takeaways. I always like to finish off with these takeaways because I try and pick them up as we speak through the webinar. So I guess my highlights from today are the following that you can see on the screen there. You know, unified data governance is essential for AI readiness. You know, when you think of the rapid adoption that we've spoken about of AI across some organizations, or just organizations that want to adopt AI and get started, it means that, you know, robust data governance isn't optional. It's a must do. That's what we've been talking through. So Microsoft Purview provides unified solutions for data, you know, security, governance, and compliance. The next one up there is, you know, get started. Licensing shouldn't hold you back from getting started. As the team have gone through today, in our experience, it makes complete sense to start your journey, even if you're on E3 licensing at the moment. We've found, and I think Johan mentioned it, we found that those that start that journey early and fully leverage functionality in E3, they're in a much better position to upgrade to E5 and take almost immediate advantage or get an immediate ROI when it comes to those E5 licenses. As we've discussed, you know, getting the foundations right is so important, which is why we've got our methodology and how we do things at Cloud Essentials. So we'd be excited to talk to you about that as well. And now with the addition of Security Copilot, we're really going to start empowering teams to respond faster as well, which is one of my key takeaways. And yeah, it is kind of exciting times on that front. I know we've had a couple of questions, and I think Chris from our team have got back to you on that, and it sort of ties in with what I've got here on the screen. So, we don't want to just talk about this. We want to open it up for further exploration. So, like Aileen mentioned, the Cloud Essentials team are opening up a couple of workshops as a next step to this webinar. My details are at the bottom of the screen. You can scan that QR code to get those details. And I'll look at my inbox filling up with sort of bookings for these workshops. But just to give you a little bit of a brief overview on them, the first workshop option is getting started with Purview deployment on E3. So we're going to be, discussing how your organization can take action to reduce risk by deploying sensitivity labeling and implementing data loss prevention controls, as mentioned by Johan. So, in that session, I think it was Seema has asked a question about having an overview on Purview.
And I think, sorry, just to get to one of the questions, is that the intention of that workshop is to also have some form of art of the possible deep diving into showing you Purview in action. So that's also one of the intention of that workshop, is not only theoretically, but actually showing you some of the case studies and actually Purview in action. We call it art of the possible because we want to show you what exactly Purview can offer you. Sorry, Keith.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I was going to get to, but you got there, Johan. Good stuff. And then on the second workshop is more specifically around Security Copilot. So at that session, we'll see that in action. We're going to explore how agents can be deployed to improve and optimize processes across security operations, identity, access, and endpoint management. So yeah, it's more of an overview on what's coming with Security Copilot as well. So on both of these, like I mentioned, we're taking bookings, and we want to book those meetings in for January. So please do get in touch with requests for those workshops, and we'll be really interested in discussing it in a little bit deeper with you guys. And with that, I don't know if any more questions have popped up. I will give it a second to see if there is any more questions. I will have a quick look. Oh, that sounds good. Okay, there was just a message to say that sounds good. Perfect. With that, that's kind of a wrap for us then in 2025. Big thank you for Aileen today from Microsoft. Really appreciate collaboration as always, Aileen. And also of course to our fantastic team at Cloud Essentials, Nivasha Sanalal and Johan van Schalkwijk. I'm going to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thanks for your interactions and interest in 2025. And we'll look forward to coming back in 2026 for more webinar and more of this series. So thanks very much for now.